The fourth commandment serves very much as a bridge between the first and the second half of the Ten Commandments. The first half is often classified as the commandments dealing with the value of loving God. The second half deal with loving your neighbor. And the bridge between the two is the fourth commandment. And the fourth commandment states very simply, "Honor your father and your mother, that you may have a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you." As we see with this particular commandment, like the ones that go before it, it adds a little bit more to it than just the commandment itself. The fourth commandment concludes that you may have long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you, providing a motivation and a reason why this commandment is important. But you notice with regard to the commandment itself, it doesn't say, "Love your father and your mother," which would appear unusual because all throughout the Scriptures we are commanded to love the Lord your God. We're commanded to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus himself says, "Love your enemies," and "Love one another as I have loved you." But here we don't see that command to love, but rather to honor your father and your mother. And when you look closely in the Scriptures, it's the only ones to whom God commands honor. And the reason is because of who they are and their role in the upbringing of children and the importance of the role of the family in the overall society that in this particular case builds up the Hebrew nation who share that covenant relationship with God. And also in honoring father and mother, we see the perhaps most basic exercise of any human being in coming to the understanding that we are not the center of the universe. Of course, in the first commandment, God's very clear. "I am the Lord your God, and you are not." But where do we come to understand that? Where do we become more disposed to understanding the concept of God and having a relationship with God, and understanding the concept that we are not the center of the universe, that there are other people we must have a relationship with? It is in our relationship with our parents, those who are charged in raising us. And in honoring our father and mother, we become well disposed to having a relationship with God and a relationship with others. And so that fourth commandment becomes that bridge commandment between loving God and loving neighbor. Now, of course, we know that we don't always see that perfect relationship between parents. Sometimes there's a great tumultuous relationship, and we see it in the Scriptures as well. We see it in Jacob's relationship with his sons, who deeply resented the favor he showed to Joseph. We see it in the relationship between David and his children, especially his son Absalom, who leads a rebellion against him. Sometimes we don't see that perfect relationship between parents. And in some cases, unfortunately, we see cases in which parents neglect their children, don't raise them properly. Some in which raise their children because they want them to love them rather than honor them. Parents who'd rather have their children be their friends rather than children see their parents as their parents. But there's always that commandment to honor the father and mother. I've even had people, thankfully rare, speak to me of the negative relationship they've had with their parents. And in some cases I've even said, well, you have a right to be angry. You have a right to resent what has happened. But I often remind them, there's still that little commandment that we see in the Scriptures: honor your father and your mother. The commandment doesn't say you must love your father and mother. It doesn't even say you have to like them. We certainly hope that the relationship is such that you do. But the importance of honoring your parents helps us to grow in the basic realization that we are not the center of the universe, that there are authority figures to which we owe honor and respect, that there are other people, our neighbor, to whom we are commanded to love, and there is in fact a God who watches over all of us and enters into a relationship of love with us. And the first experience we get of that reality is in the relationship we have with our parents, in which, come what may, we are commanded to honor our father and our mother, because they are our father and mother. And we pray it is through them that we are raised to be responsible members of society, as well as productive members of the community of faith to which we belong. The reason God gives for obeying the fourth commandment is that you may have a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Part of that is indicative of the fact that where the family unit is strong, the civilization endures. But when that civilization seeks to undermine or diminish the role of parents or the importance of the family unit, then we see the early stages of the collapse of that civilization. We see it time and time again when certain regimes pass laws that seek to undermine the role of parents in the upbringing of their children. And we see societies in which laws are passed that strengthen and support the role of parents. In our society, we call them parental notification laws, because they recognize the important role that parents must have and the consent and the consultation that must take place with parents when it comes to children, especially in such things as medical procedures. One can't give a child surgery, and in some cases not even an aspirin, without consulting the parents. Parental supervision is an important part of many activities with children. But unfortunately, we see in some societies, and perhaps a little bit in modern society as well, because of certain socio-political agendas or value systems, we see laws being passed in which the parental role is undermined, the diminishment of parental notification laws, and so on. These laws alienate children from their parents, and especially at a time in which children are in formidable years of maturation, in which they're growing from children to young men and women, there's where we see these laws kind of interpose and interfere on the relationship between parents and children that can result in a terrible alienation that children will have when they are adults toward their parents. And so as a people of faith, we need to be very aware of how our society treats the relationship between parents and children. Is every relationship perfect? No. But where those relationships are not good, that is not the norm, that is the exception. And we are called to recognize in that fourth commandment of the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, honor your father and your mother, that you may have a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Remember that that is the motivation for this commandment, and we must always support the role of parents in the lives and upbringing of their children. And in doing so, we are obeying that basic commandment that God gave us. As individuals, in our relationship to our parents, and as a society called to be of support to that relationship and that role in the basic unit of the family. Honor your father and your mother, that you may have a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you, in the land we call home, and the society that sustains us as a people.